Reporters Roundtable provides viewers with in-depth examination of issues reported on leading media outlets across the world. A lively panel of journalists with comprehensive knowledge in all fields of endeavor, be it politics, health, business, sports, entertainment, information, communication technology, gender, law, international affairs and diplomacy, and a host of others will objectively dissect the matter of contention. On Reporters Roundtable, fairness, objectivity, factuality, and non-partisanship is our hallmark. It's the Double RT Show with Rebecca Ewa. This and every other Thursday from 10 to 12 GMT. Make a date with us. The Reporters Roundtable, all angles, all sides. My vision for Ghana is of an optimistic, self-confident and prosperous nation with a strong and thriving democratic society in which mutual trust and economic opportunities exist for all, irrespective of their background. The next new patriotic party government will place people at its center. Their hopes and their concerns will drive its policies and priorities. I promise to build a Ghana that works and gives each and every one of us the opportunity to improve our lives. A Ghana that works for us and our families, not just for the rich and powerful. As I travel the country over the years, I see the pain and sacrifices made by ordinary Ghanaians every day. It is for these people that I am running for president. For ordinary Ghanaians who have been betrayed by the government that does not care. It is to them that my government will be dedicated. I have an unshakable faith that our country, the Black Star of Africa, under the leadership of the NPP, has a bright future. A future that will be secured by the enterprise, creativity, and hard work of the Ghanaian people. Join me so together we can build a country where if you show up, step up, and work hard, you would have your fair share of its wealth and be fairly rewarded for your hard work. A country in which hard work pays and cutting corners does not. A country in which no matter where you come from, you will be rewarded based on merit, not on whom you know basis. A country in which every young person can hope and aspire and reach his or her fullest potential right here in Ghana. This is the pledge of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, presidential candidate for the New Patriotic Party, to the good people of Ghana as the party launched its manifesto over the weekend. It is a voluminous document, but we will try and touch on some key areas such as the economy and jobs, health, energy, and education. If we are not constrained by time, then we will touch on governance, agriculture, and a bit of infrastructure with major emphasis on housing. A happy day to you all. Pleased to have you tuned in to a show that is fair, objective, and non-partisan. Here we offer insights beyond what is printed in the newspaper, posted online, or aired on television or radio. The program provides viewers with in-depth examination and thorough understanding of issues reported on leading media outlets in Ghana. It is the Double RT Show, proudly supported by Ashrifia Wear and Health West Ghana, with me, Rebecca Ewa, and as we do it always, let's get interactive by our text line 02444 75422, our Facebook page. You can post your messages there or email us on reportersroundtable@gmail.com, and they are all boldly written on your screen as we look at the NPP's manifesto for 2016. Be my guest. And I have in the studio the Deputy Director or communications spokesperson of the New Patriotic Party 2016 manifesto, lawyer Mike Okoye Jr. Dr. Jennifer Hesty is in Ghana under the auspices of the U.S. Fulbright Specialist Program. She is also a professor of anthropology at the University of Pennsylvania, USA, and the author of The Press and Political Culture in Ghana. Fred Odro is the head of Department of Policy Management at the Institute of Local Governance Studies, ILGS, and we also have our very own Richard Mensah, who is the news editor at CTFM. Welcome to the program. All right, let me take the thoughts of. Let me start with you, Dr. Hesty. Agenda for Jobs Manifesto, 2016. What's your view about it? Have you done any review? I know you have done some reviews on the NDC manifesto. So let's.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have read both manifestos, and I can say, I wherever I have gone, people have been asking, when is the NPP manifesto coming out? It was greatly anticipated. I myself immediately downloaded it, and I read it word for word. I went over it, pored over it last night, and I was very impressed with the detail. I have so many questions. I know so many Ghanaians I have been talking to have questions about it, so I'm thrilled to be here. I think this is a wonderful program.
Great. Mr. Odro.
Well, I am very happy with the manifesto coming out. Finally, we can have something to compare with. And again, it's for me, it's expanding the frontiers of our democracy. That we have something, a document to which we can all make reference to and make comparison and push forward our national agenda. So it's a wonderful thing that we're experiencing.
Richard.
Well, for me it's the same thing. Once their aims and objectives are clearly outlined in such a policy document, which is not only good for just education, but also for policymakers and for us as reporters to be able to monitor and also at least ask questions and follow through, then it's also good, because it would really be out of nothing that you would want to ask questions of things you don't know, but now you have a document you can refer to. You have areas if you want to ask questions, you can do, and it spells out clearly what they intend doing. And for that matter, well, it's all well and good that such a manifesto is out now.
I know lawyer is warming up, but I'll bring you in. Don't worry. Richard, let me stay with you. You watched that of the NDC, right?
Yeah.
Or even if you haven't watched it, you've read about it as a news editor. Equating it to that of the NDC, would you say it's in sharp contrast, taking the approach, and in terms of precision and all of that?
No, well, what you say is that what our manifesto is meant for. It's a policy direction as to how they would want to address the many challenges of the country. And what are the challenges of the country now? We almost face the same challenges, we almost face the same problems, and therefore addressing such problems, really, you wouldn't have both parties trying to be divergently opposed to addressing the problems. And that is why maybe the talk is out there that my ideas are stolen, or this kind of things are stolen. For me, the way I look at it is that, look, what are the challenges they are trying to address? The basic infrastructure, education, joblessness, and all these things. Well, there's always a way to address these things. What may be different will be the approach which each of them will use. And I can tell you, look, if you look at the NDC's own, the NDC says they are social democratic party. The NPP has always maintained its stance, from 1951. In fact, a critical look at their 1951 UGCC, that is their mother party. If you look at it critically, you would find out that they've not departed from what they believe in, and at every point in time they still maintain, although they are property owning, they believe in property owning democracy. They've always believed in enhancing the private sector, using the private sector as engine of growth. But within all this, they will always maintain that within a specific forum of the welfare state. Let me see, for instance, in their 1951 manifesto, it was a 10-point agenda, but they said to ensure the optimum diffusion of private enterprise and ownership property shall be developed alongside the maximum attainment of liberties within the framework of the welfare state, and I'm emphasizing on this because there's the private sector which they emphasize on, there's the liberties which they emphasize on, that is democracy, and then they come to property owning, but they enclose all this within the welfare state, which means that whilst they are looking at all this, they will also look at how to ensure that those who are unable to come up to that kind of level will be taken care of. So yeah, that is how I look at it. I don't think it's sharp contrast, but it's different approaches of addressing the same issues that faces us as a nation.
Mr. Joe, do you share the same view?
I beg to differ a little bit, because by and large our politics is becoming centrist. I mean, gone are the days that you have the left or the right. If we study our politics over the years, I mean, if we start from even the 1980s coming, we've been going the private sector, we've been talking about all these things. Now, in Ghana now, we believe, I mean, there is a posture that the NPP is a right party. I mean, they are conservative in outlook in certain things. But then, gradually, if you look at the policies, because our key point of emphasis would be that of President Kufuor. I mean, the policies that he pursued, by and large, were social in outlook. I mean, they tended to look towards supporting the underprivileged. I mean, talk about LEAP. There can be no program that is leftist like the LEAP. So I think, by and large, in Ghana and even all over the world, there's a converging point that all the parties seem to be moving towards the center. As much as you support private sector, you will still need to support some of the most vulnerable in the society. So in looking at the two manifestos, you see both running, because everybody, we talk about the private sector being the engine of growth. We've been talking about the private sector is capitalist, surely. But then if you look at other policies that both parties are saying they want to pursue, it's also leftist. So there's
some ideological dishonesty.
Well, I wouldn't say so. Ghana is not, we are not an island unto ourselves.
Okay.
All over the world, go to the West. I mean, America, in Western Europe, they are all, I mean, Germany has one of the best welfare systems that you can consider. You go to UK, housing is given to the poor. So even in the West, where they preach the highest form of capitalism, they are also looking at the welfare of the most vulnerable. So I think, by and large, I see a lot of divergence, and it's no wonder that we can hear a lot of talk about you are copying me or plagiarism, and it's quite interesting. So I think it's, for me, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. You can neither be too left or too right. In every situation, the center offers the best means for a lot of us to converge. So I think it's a good thing for the country.
Great. Dr. Hasty, I see you concurring.
Yes, I agree. Sometimes people ask me what political party I belong to in the U.S., and they say, the NPP tends more towards Republicanism, and the NDC tends more towards the Democrats. However, I see in the NPP manifesto many policies, like I read the IEA evening encounter with Akufo-Addo in 2012, where he was saying, it's important to grow industry in Ghana, and for the government to be a part of helping grow that industry, and even to protect, to use tariffs to protect your industry as it grows. And that is very much a sort of democratic position. Republicans wouldn't have that position at all. So yes, I think I see in both parties a kind of mix, and that they have a lot in common, and it is the social welfare state that I see.
But would you call for a consolidated, let's say, manifesto agenda should whoever wins the 2016 elections, because you can see some of the social interventions here in the NPP manifesto. You see, there's a crisscross. So would you call for that? Whoever wins should focus on one agenda, like looking forward or looking at the needs of the people or the populace?
Well, I would say that whoever wins has the mandate, and so if people want a particular set of policies, then that's what they voted for. It might be symbolically important to accommodate a few of the issues and interests of the other party, but I do think that if the president wins, he should design his own program.
Well,
Richard?
I'm thinking that, talking of consolidation, when you win, what will be your prime interest? It is the prime interest will be to address the needs of the nation, and that is what we must look at. Anything that is good for the nation. He talked about some of the policies that President Kufuor implemented, and Gabby can bear me out. Some of the very important social policies that President Kufuor did when he was in power was not in their manifesto. It was not. But what did he do? He looked at what the needs of the people were at that time and implemented it. So you talk about almost all the very good social interventions, like the school feeding program and all the rest. It was not in their manifesto. So whoever wins, you look at what is best for the nation and how best you can address it. So really calling for consolidation will not really be the matter of draw. The matter will be what will be the needs of the people that should be addressed, and which one should be addressed in the short term, which one should be addressed in the long term, and how would a person who is president of the nation, who has the mandate of the people, would apply himself to the rules and regulations of the country to do that.
Let me take the final bit of Dr. Ojo on this issue. Then I come to you, lawyer. You've been warming up for so long a time. You are calm.
I'm
okay,
listening.
that's fine.
Okay, on the consolidation, I think it's not going to happen. Because even if you use a word that has been used elsewhere, somebody will say plagiarism. And even as we sit here, but take the NHIS.
But the plagiarism is good if it's good for the people of Ghana. Why not?
In fact, I even don't want to even look at that issue. For me, it's a non-issue. It's not a relevant issue to our national discourse. It's just some political point scoring that people are doing. But the fact of the matter is that I quite agree with Mr. Mensah here. The point is that when you go into power, there might be critical things that you may not have in your manifesto, but in government you would always realize this is important, that we need to look at it. So as we go along, it will be necessary to look at certain things. Well, it can be turned around in order not for somebody to say, it is my policy you are implementing. They will try to fashion it in a way. So, but as we go along, I have a big trust in the Ghanaian that if somebody is in authority, by and large, they will take the best decision for the country. If it means going to, in quotes, steal or plagiarize, they will go and pick it and work it out. Although they will never concede that you first moved the idea. But in any case, who first came up with all these ideas we are talking about? We picked it from somewhere. It's been done elsewhere that we are also trying to do. So maybe we don't need to dwell too much on that bit.
Okay. All right. So over the weekend, the New Patriotic Party launched its manifesto. That is the agenda for jobs. They call it change, right? Agenda for jobs. And creating prosperity and equal opportunity for all. We'll take a soundbite of maybe snippets of what happened over the weekend. Then we bring in lawyer Mike Okoye Jr.
Our flag bearer, Nana Akufo-Addo, your wife Rebecca, the running mate, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and your wife Samira, party elders, excellencies of the diplomatic corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, fellow Ghanaians. It is always a great joy to me when party members meet in such great numbers to show support for and reinforce our belief in our central cause and goal of seeking power not for the sake of it, but rather for the good and inclusive governance of our dear nation, Ghana. The history of our tradition, dating back to 1947, the dawn of party politics in our country, makes this claim unassailable. Such meetings, therefore, reinvigorate our spirits and send a clear message to all and sundry that we are determined and ready to take over the reins of government of Ghana and steer it once more to the heights of development and prosperity as we once did. Indeed, our mission this time will be to accelerate the nation's development into the mainstream of developed countries of the world on sustainable basis. Flag bearer, my friends, we have come here today to launch our manifesto, which reaffirms our historic vision, mission, and commitment to uphold the rule of law, human rights, and economic prosperity and social advancement for all Ghanaians through accountable and efficient good governance. This will be delivered through faithful pursuit of the programs and projects contained in the manifesto, when by the grace of God, we assume power in January 2017. Fellow Ghanaians, of late, a lot of fetish has been made about the writing of manifesto, and some have even made it seem as if the mere launch of a manifesto will automatically lead to victory at the polls or conjure development of the country. While we all agree that manifestos are an important part in competitive multi-party politics, as they lay out the various trajectories that the different parties would pursue in office, they could not be just a collection of promises and scholarly work to impress. Accepting them on face value must not be done. Such an approach might belie the integrity of the purpose, since they could be riddled with opportunism to hoodwink the voting population. Therefore, the scrutiny of the history and track record of the ideology and public service, if any, of the protagonists becomes crucial. For us in the Dankwa Buzia tradition, however, the core of our manifesto is not just a recently collected set of ideas that we wish to try out on the people, or a smoothly packaged work for public consumption. Rather, the essential features of our manifesto focus and revolve around upholding and advancing the dignity of humanity, especially of all the citizens of our nation. This has always been the core of our tradition.
Our distinguished statesman, His Excellency John Npp'S, chairman for the occasion, the acting national chairman of our party, the Honorable Freddie Blay, my good friend Elimbele Blay, MPP national officers, members of the National Council, the chairman and members of the Council of Elders, members of Parliament, MPP parliamentary candidates, the regional campaign teams, and the campaign sector committee chairman and members, constituency chairman, our former ministers, metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives, and party officials, members of the diplomatic corps, representatives of fellow political parties and identifiable bodies, members of the media, fellow MPP members, fellow Ghanaians, my beautiful lady Rebecca and my daughters, Nana Dukuya Jakruma. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that we are making such a happy event out of the launch of our manifesto. It is a fact of our lives that not many people, all political parties for that matter in our country, appreciate the significance of a manifesto in a democracy. Some see it simply as a list of promises to attract votes, and not much thought or intention is given to their fulfillment. To others, it is an opportunity to engage in some light-hearted tomfoolery. For my part, I fully understand the consequence of putting your signature to a contract. A manifesto represents for me a solemn social contract between the electorate and the elected. The manifesto should also help the electorate to distinguish between the various.
So you heard the presidential candidate for the New Patriotic Party, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and the former president of Ghana, J.A. Kufuor. Right, but there was one thing prior to the launch of the manifesto that took ways. It's borders of one product, and I have lawyer Michael Quay here. I want to find out, is the MPP now synonymous to the product? Because I can see you brought chunks of it here in the studio, and there's one right in front of you.
Yes. Made in Ghana product,
Okay.
Calipo. Well, it actually just started as a rebuttal when Nana Akufo-Addo was shown drinking Calipo. And we just want to say we should be proud of promoting made in Ghana goods. So if, for example, as we all saw, President John Mahama was wearing made in Ghana shoes, which he exhibited, then we should promote made in Ghana shoes. And we should also promote made in Ghana juice. For example, as the people of Komenda told us that they would want to see an orange factory in addition to sugar, for example, in their area. So we are just saying that Nana Akufo-Addo is somebody who always says, I believe in Ghana. Ghanaians also believe in Ghana. A lot of the people actually drinking Calipo are not MPP supporters. Some of them have stuck more to the angle of promotion of made in Ghana. But I'm sure, as you know, the usage of a knife can be used to cut meat or to cut a person, depending on what you want to use it for. So some of us have identified ourselves with Calipo to promote Ghana in that vein.
Right. I guess they're paying something to you, right?
Oh, no, and that is why we're saying that it is more a promotional thing. If it were to do with payment, then maybe it would be with economical gain, and it would take away the shine of what we are trying to do for made in Ghana products.
Right. Let me start with you on this note. Why would you allow an opposition party to actually appropriate the sense of your 2012 manifesto mantra, transforming lives, transforming Ghana. They've used it to an extent that they're trumpeting it all over. And now you come out with a new manifesto with an agenda for jobs, creating prosperity and equal opportunities for all. Why didn't you focus on the mantra of your old manifesto? Because after all, you didn't have the chance of coming into power.
Oh no, I mean the emphasis has shifted, because as much as yes, the agenda for jobs includes transformation, we've realized through several polls, most of which have come from international organizations, that unemployment and then second, energy, were the two highest issues. So we thought that if that is what the Ghanaian people are worried about, then as part of the transformational agenda, we'll give it a topic. A lot of people don't really understand just transformation, but transformation is a process. But what is the main thing you're going to do in that transformation is to bring jobs. Now, I would want to delve into a very interesting topic which came up earlier with regard to the issue of right or left or center.
Okay.
The MPP, actually, in terms of our ideology, we are a center-right party. That is what we represent. And what does center-right mean? Center-right means that, right is mainly about capitalization, which in effect is privatization, market-driven forces, and so on and so forth. And then the center also has to deal with state interventions. So what is the MPP about? The MPP believes that we must allow people to grow and develop. We must allow people to own their own property. So when we say, for example, property owning, we don't mean mansions. We mean your own hut, your own watch, your own canoe is your property. We don't want a state where somebody can come and take your fishing net off you for whatever reason. But if you have worked for it and it is your property, we want a state where your fishing net is respected as yours. So that's the first thing. Then secondly, we also realize that it's not everybody who will be able to lace up their bootstraps and move with the tide. I am telling you today, even just the panelists sitting here, if you were to take everything we own in this world off us and to give us 500 Ghana cedis each, by a month from today, we will all have different finances, because everybody applies themselves differently. So for those who may not be able to apply themselves, or who may not, for one disadvantage or the other, whether it's to do with disability, whether it's to do with affordability of education, whether it's to do with affordability of health, we also believe that the state must intervene to create avenues which would give a helping hand to those who have not been able to get up themselves, and that would bring them at par to those who have the privilege, and then you can all move forward. I would want to give a typical example of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo himself. His father was a teacher who used to walk 6 miles to go and teach in Chebi. He was from Ekropon. He went to Chebi to go and teach. Eventually, he got a scholarship from the colonial government to go abroad after a scholarship to go to Achimota. And then I need to land on this.
Yeah,
on this
I
point.
will
It's
make
very-
you. I guess you are not taking the Kalipuna, right?
No,
Let me
no.
just put it away.
No
for
worries,
now.
no
Yeah,
worries.
Sure. You can
So,
make your submission.
yes. So the issue was Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's father had a scholarship to Achimota School. Then he had a scholarship again to Oxford. And now look at his generation. So what we believe in is that that was a social intervention. Otherwise, he would have been an ordinary teacher walking up and down in Chebi 6 miles to school every day. So coming from such a background, he realizes that we must give people a helping hand, and we must be able to have a manifesto of solutions, because Ghana has problems, and the only way to tackle those problems is for the leaders to be able to use the resources that have been entrusted into their hands. We don't own the resources as leaders. We are entrusted with the resources of the Ghanaian people in terms of how to manage it, produce it efficiently in a way that would benefit everybody. And that is what we have strived to do with this document. So we are center-right. We believe that there must be social interventions to help those who can't, and we've shown by example in the past. I'm sure we'll list a few as the program goes
Yeah,
on to
sure.
detect.
But let's go to our substantive issue.
Yes.
We have areas, our parameters that we are operating within. I want us to start with the economy first. Your party is promising a tax reduction in almost every area. Wouldn't this generate a revenue gap or something?
No, not at all. I mean, the issue is very, very simple. You know, one thing is, as Winston Churchill famously said, you cannot tax your way into prosperity. It is not possible. In fact, what you end up doing is standing in a bucket and trying to lift yourself up by the handle of the bucket. That is impossible. So what are we saying? We're saying, for example, that we are going to reduce corporate tax from 25% to 20%. When the NPP came into power in 2001, one of the first things we did was to reduce then corporate tax of 35% to 25%. Why did we do that? Because we don't want to be squeezing the businesses by their neck so they can't breathe. If you notice, in terms of the big telco companies, when they come into this country, what do we invite them to come and do? We invite them to come and improve our technology, but most importantly, we invite them to come and not only provide a service, but to provide employment. And by that, we give them a tax rebate for 5 years. So if even such a big multinational company deserves a tax rebate for 5 years in order for them to settle, establish, and help the country, then we also think that smaller businesses should not be overtaxed. Let me give you another example. We are saying that we are going to remove the 17.5% VAT on financial services, which had been introduced by the recent government. Why do we want to do that? Now, this is a country where we are trying to convince people to bring their money to the banks. Because as you know, a lot of these cocoa farmers and people who have real cash, the Okaishi women and so on, they have so much money, but they are very reluctant to take it to the bank because they feel that there will be all sorts of charges on it. So whilst banks in the West are rather encouraging people that when you come and put your money in there, we will increase the money for you by the time you come and pick it, we are rather decreasing the money by charging all sorts of services. Now, when the banks are charged, they pass on these charges to the consumer. Now, if the banks don't have enough liquidity, they won't be able to meet their capitalization margins. They won't be able to lend money to businesses who will then expand and create more jobs. Now, that would mean that there's a shortfall of liquidity. Invariably, that will lead to inflation. And if we have inflation where the cost of goods are too high because production has gone down, and so now demand and supply means that the supply is short, and so the demand becomes high, it leads to high cost. So it leads to inflation. Then the stagnation in terms of the liquidation of the money in the bank would then lead straight to stagflation. Is that the kind of economy we want? No. So these are some of the reasons why we want to deal with these tax issues. Let me give you another very practical example.
Okay, so that we bring in the views of the other
very much so, because we'll be doing it gradually.
Yeah.
And I'm happy you even said in the beginning that we may not be able to do most of it today, but we will be happy if you call us to explain anything further. Let's look at the housing market, for example. Now, we are saying we are going to abolish the 5% VAT on real estate. When President Kufuor came in 2001, we actually gave a tax rebate to real estate builders in Ghana for 7 years. So when you set your company, you have tax rebate for 7 years. I would plead for those who are in the real estate business to send text messages to the program to tell you how they were able to use that to grow the sector. Today, they rather have 5% VAT on real estate. So now what is leading to is we are rather taxing capital, we are taxing investment instead of taxing profit, which would have emanated from production. And that can never be a good way to grow an economy.
Okay, Dr. Hasty, are you convinced by the NPP's reduction of invariably all taxes on imports?
It's not all taxes, specifically targeted taxes that would be listed.
Sure.
Yes.
With a view that tax is mandatory, compulsion, statutorily. Are you convinced?
Let me address one particular tax with a question to Mr. Okoye. So in the U.S., when we talk about reducing the corporate tax, there are often complaints or concerns that kind of reduction of corporate tax tends to benefit the wealthy. So then, if there may be concerns about the widening gap between rich and poor, I would ask Mr. Okoye, does the MPP have in mind measures to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yes. In fact, in view of that, whilst we are giving the, what I'll say, the big guys, as Americans will say, the big guys reduction in these areas, we have actually gone into, and I want to read this so that what we are going to do is this: we are going to reduce VAT for micro and small enterprises from 17.5% to 3%.
Yes.
Because we believe that whilst we are giving the big guys reduction in that area, because what do we want them to do? We want them to be able to operationalize better and to employ more people. So invariably we won't lose. Whilst more people are employed, they will all pay taxes. They will all spend. There will be more liquidity in the system. And once there's also more employment and expansion, there will be more profit. Then we'll tax that profit, because it is better to get, let's say, for example, 10% of $1 million than to get 50% of $10, because you'll get nothing there. So we are making sure that the big guys can operationalize. In fact, even the bigger guys are getting rebates for 5 years. And we feel that others should also get some. Not only will it come to the middle guys, now even the small guys will have a flat rate of 3%. So that is what we intend to do, to be able to stimulate growth, which would in effect lead to a better economy.
And would that, I guess the question, would that bridge the gap between the rich and the poor? Would they bring the poor to some level where everybody can feel comfortable?
Yes, it would, because when a company grows, the first thing they do is to employ. And the rich or the middle class are the owners of the businesses. Who do they employ? They employ those who have just come out of university, those who have just started life, those who are poorer. So in effect, it will help the poor. Most importantly, we've also put down incentives, and I'm sure maybe you may have come across that, for companies who would employ fresh graduates. Because a lot of people, they ask for the magic word, experience, before they want to employ you. And we are saying that if you rather go into employing fresh people, doing skills and training development for fresh employees, we will also give you further incentives to be able to encourage you to do that.
Okay, Mr. Ojo, would you say that the solution to Ghana's problems is that of tax reduction or an effective tax administration?
Well, I think we should have both. If we don't have both, it will not work. Let me come back to a point that you raised about bringing the taxation, the VAT tax on
17?
SMEs from 17% to the flat rate, the 3%. I think for me is a wonderful idea. That is one key thing that I found interesting in there when it comes to taxation, because you see, if you in taxation you look at the top 10% and the 90% below, which covers the poor and middle class normally. This one is usually on consumption. And if you reduce it, one, mind you, in Ghana we have a major problem with the informal sector. Most people are not taxed within the informal sector. And if you want to bring a lot of people into the pool, encourage people to pay what they can afford. And if people are paying less for the products they are buying in terms of because the tax element is low, what will happen is that we're going to consume more. If we consume more, we're going to create more opportunities for investment and for creation of jobs. So for me, that bit is good. I am not too keen about reducing taxes on high-end income earners. I'm not saying we should put the burden on them, but let us reduce it to a point also that will allow everybody to enjoy a bit of the tax relief so that we can all have more money in our pockets. Mind you, our salaries or our incomes are not the highest in the world. So if the taxing on direct consumption is low, it will help us to be able to afford more. And if we are buying more within our system, we can also create more wealth. We can create better investment and more growth in jobs.
Urgent Mensa, tax reduction or effective tax administration?
Well, like you said, both need to work together to ensure maximum effect. For me, looking at the tax policy, I think what my only particular challenge is that what are taxes meant for? They are meant for government to spearhead infrastructural developments and all this manner of things. So when you are when you are reducing it, I'm asking myself, where then are we going to get this to fund this? Remember, we are a developing country, so we don't have that kind of financial muscles to be able to achieve these things. What I did not clearly see in that tax rebate and all these things is how to ensure that the larger non-formal sector is included in this. You know, when he was talking, he mentioned our pay and all those things, because in Ghana, relatively, it is those who work in the formal sector who are taxed. So really, tax on the informal sector is non-existent, and you would want a government that can include the informal sector, which is large out there, and there's a way to include them. Look, we all go out there and then we say government is not doing this, government is not doing this, but what if it's only 10% of us who are being tasked for any and everything to do? So that's one of my challenges. But I think on a whole, what he said, their tax policies as it relates to the SMEs and all those things are very good. It will encourage people to be able to explore their initiatives and get into it. And then, for instance, we are all talking about job creation and all this. These are some of the things that can include. My only challenge is this. One of the main things that we complain about as a nation here, you talk about fuel prices, which affects almost everybody. Okay, let's look at the component of taxes that goes into fuel pricing. And so I was hoping to see a definite policy of we're going to reduce these taxes, which will bring down the prices of fuel. You know, but that was not done. So you rather, like you said, you saw the tax reduction in the high-end goods and all those things, and then the SMEs and all that. But the one thing that affects everybody, even on our energy pricing, there's a lot of taxes over there. So then you are looking at how to.
But I think really for energy, the manifesto captures it.
Yeah.
If I read right.
Yeah. I was about to answer.
Yeah.
Does it answer the question of price, the
pricing? I'm talking of the pricing,
tax
not
element in the
tax
pricing.
element.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it touches on the tax element.
But
I wouldn't speak for the MPP.
No, you're speaking because you read the manifesto.
No.
So.
It did not go directly to the pricing. When you read it carefully, it was a general attitude to the tax. So we're going to reduce this and it will lead to this. But I'm saying that look at the pricing component of fuel.
The tax element.
The tax elements that increases it. So if you say, okay, we're going to reduce the VAT element of the pricing, or VAT element on fuel, on energy, that is just one aspect of the pricing component that ensures that build up. And I'm saying that I would have wanted to see a definite policy. Look, within the pricing of petroleum, there are a lot of things there. Some taxes that is being used to pay some debts, and even the energy. When you talk about electricity, there are those things there. Now, if you reduce only the VAT element on all those things, all these taxes will be there to build up. Some are 1 point something, 2 point something. They will all be there. But these are the things that affect majority of the people in Ghana.
But
so that's
we'll come to the energy subsector. But Ms. Okwe,
yes,
your
I would want the opportunity to just
react
respond
to that. Okay, right.
one or two things, just to elaborate. What they mentioned is very good, but if you look at page 18 of our manifesto, point Roman numeral I downwards, the first thing we've said to tackle your fear or worry is that we are going to broaden the tax base as a result of formalization of the economy.
Good.
And we realize that tax collection, there are two things that worry tax collection. One is data management, i.e., a national ID system, which we have also promised in there, because if we're able to add that to the street naming, which has recently been done, then we'll be able to tax better. So as much as we want to reduce taxes in some areas for efficiency, productivity, profitability, and therefore getting more money, we can only achieve that by broadening the tax base, as we said. Then that would also lead to an increase in tax compliance, because we know that most people are usually forced to comply with tax. Madam would tell us, especially in the United States, we get to hear just about the famous people, but a lot of people go to jail because of tax. And well, they want to call it tax avoidance, but eventually,
Well, tax avoidance is allowed.
yeah, well, but that's what I'm saying. They
Evasion
want
is
to call it.
dangerous.
They want to call it avoidance, but actually, it's evasion. In fact, in England, all the tax avoidance is now being classified as evasion, because they've realized that the chartered accountants are smartly using jargon to escape the responsibilities that they have. Now, one thing we also know is that with prosperity, most of the citizens, they don't rely on the help from the government, whether it comes to education, whether it even comes to help in terms of health and so on. I have an NHIS card, but because I am also in the middle bracket, I can afford to go to a hospital where I can pay for. So when the government is able to give us a good education, they know also that we would move into a certain bracket where you can help yourself and you don't need to rely on the government so much. That automatically reduces government expenditure. Most of such people in the middle, for example, I had a classmate, he went to a public school, a middle school, he came to secondary school with the help of the government. Today he's a doctor at Kolebu and his son is a morning star. So he's now paying fees. He won't need the government assistance, and then somebody else can go in there, get it, and also come up. So this is the whole idea of how we want to treat taxes in that regard.
Okay, but the NPP says in its manifesto that you are shifting towards production.
Yes.
Yes, but can production on its own boost the economy without a sufficient tax? What I say, collection and all.
You know, the history is simple. You know, before the Ghanaian economy, and that is one of the reasons why we were colonized, we were to grow and to harvest raw material for the other powers that be. So we are now saying that we don't want to just grow and harvest. We want to be able to, after we harvest the raw material, we must process it, we must preserve it, we must package it, then we market it. That gives it a better price. So once we are able to get a better price, that leads to more production. It also creates employment. What is one of the biggest problems we have in this country? Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has realized that one of the biggest problems is that we have rural-urban migration. Why? The people want to move from the hubs in the villages into Accra for non-existent jobs. So when they come here, they sleep rough, they become kayaye, they become all sorts of other things which are unproductive. So if you are now able to move the second part of the agroeconomy from not just the growth and harvest, but now you move it into in terms of process, preservation, packaging and marketing, you are creating businesses, i.e. factories. So the people will stay there, they will be working, and that will lead to more production, and the more production means more employment, and the more employment means more profit, and then we will be able to get more taxes to be able to do what we want to do. So it's a cyclical effect that we are trying to put together in a very practical way, because the problem exists and we have to find a solution to the problem. Otherwise, we'll always be going back and forth, importing everything we eat, importing everything we use.
Because our country is structured in that manner where it's just around exports of raw materials.
Yes, but this can change very easily, as was done in a place like India. And anybody who knows the history of Ghana, in the 50s, we had roughly the same GDP as a country like Korea. But today, in terms of the world, they have the highest concentration of technology in terms of even Wi-Fi. They make some of the best ships. they make Samsung phones, they make Hyundai cars. They've moved into a different stratosphere. And that was simply because of planning. So I think that if our leaders...
And is that what the MPP is promising?
Very much so. And if you notice, when the MPP moved from highly indebted poor country to lower middle income, it was the most rapid transformation that the world has ever seen. Within 8 years, we moved to lower middle income status. And I am telling you unequivocally and in no uncertain terms that if we had had another 8 years, we would have moved into higher middle income economy. Why? Because once the problem is there, even in the West, everything is not solved. Madam will tell you in America, people sleep on the streets. They have just even introduced Obamacare, which is healthcare, which we had introduced in about 2003 onwards. So it is just a matter of understanding that, look, the oil money exists. What are we going to do with it? Somebody asked, for example, what are we going to do in terms of all these things with one factory, one district, one factory, one village, one dam, 1 million per constituency and all of that. I'll come into that area in the next segment to explain not only what we want to do, but the availability of funds that is already sitting there in terms of capital expenditure in the budget to be able to tackle these crucial issues.
Okay, Dr. Histy, what is that magical thing that can turn the fortunes of Ghana around as far as modernizing our economy is concerned?
So it's a wonderful question, and let me first agree wholeheartedly with the analysis about the path to prosperity. I think I've seen critiques of the Africa Rising hypothesis that suggests that the real path to prosperity for African countries is industrialization, is building factories, because that's how the Asian tigers did it. And they did it not by separating their public and private sectors, but through strategic partnerships between the state and the private sector. So then my question that I would toss back at you, maybe you can answer it maybe when we come back around, would be about your the famous MPP policy of one factory, one district, and how that actually works in terms of the public and the private sector. Will there be incentives for private sector to build factories, or is it going to be some kind of partnership between the two, or will they be state-owned enterprises outright?
Thank you.
I'll come to you, Doug. Let's take Mr. Joe, from the local governance perspective. What are you looking to seeing our own Ghana in the next 5 or 10 years to come? What is that thing that, from the local governance perspective, you are hoping to turn the fortunes of Ghana around?
Well, currently, Ghana is facing a problem of high rates of urbanization. A lot of people are moving from the rural environments into the urban centers. Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, Sekandi, Takrade. Of course, you can talk about the Techimans and the rest. They are becoming a huge center of high rates of urbanization. And I think we must be very careful about this situation if we don't do a lot more about bridging the gap between the rural areas and the urban areas. You see, if you go to most developed countries, you'll find out that the rich tend to live even in the rural areas rather than in the urban environments. Why would a rich person want to live in a rural area? Because one, the person would avoid a lot of the hassles in the city, but at the same time, they will get virtually everything you will get in a city without hassle. And now, if you are talking about...
If I may just quickly add, in fact, my observation in England is that the very rich stay in the countryside because that's where the production is, in terms of the farming and the factories.
In the English farmers are one of
the
the most prosperous people you can think of. So the issue is that, for me, it's very important we start looking at expanding our industrial base, moving it away from the Accras and the Kumasis and the Temas, giving more opportunity to people at various areas to also participate in the industrialization process without necessarily being in in Accra or Kumasi.
Okay. From the journalism point of view.
Well, I've read a lot about our economy and what needs to change and all that, but I think the narrative must change now, going forward. It all has to do with our strong points. What do we depend on? The structure of our economy must change. What the things we depend on. Currently, the way we run our economy, we are not industrialized. Our agriculture forms, it employs a lot, over 70% of our people. It gives us a lot of foreign cash. But what do we see of agriculture? It's still the same subsistence, and it's not industrialized and all that. There's been a lot of talk about how going to have a modernized agriculture from at least within the Fourth Republic governments that I've seen. There's been a lot of talk about that, but I think there should be more commitment, because that's the only way we can change the structure of our economy. So if agriculture is modernized, we started producing cocoa and depending on cocoa as the second highest producer in the world. What have we been able to do? Currently there's just a few factories here which are trying to do that, but the nation has not made conscious efforts to be able to ensure that, look, we export this thing not as raw products but as finished products. That's the only way we can maximize on our profits and we can maximize on our intake. To do that, you need the factories, you need the strategic industries around strategic places to be able to do. And as much as you want to enter into this, I'm thinking that the narrative about getting ourselves out of this whole thing about third world and developing and all this has to do with the structure of our economy. And one of our strong points is about our agricultural sector and also ensuring that we industrialize, not forgetting the fact that there's great potential for the African continent and even within the sub-region for trade amongst ourselves, and that is what we are not looking at. In the next 10 to 15 years, the sub-region would grow in leaps. If the population is going to grow in leaps, what are we doing as a continent or as a sub-region to ensure that we even trade amongst ourselves? Because that can be a real strong point to even lift ourselves up from where we are now. But well, if we all not concentrate on our strong points. So Ghana is strong in cocoa, you concentrate on the cocoa, you do it well, you allow the others to concentrate on what they are good at to do it well, and then you integrate in terms of trade whilst you are looking at changing the structure of your economy. I think then the narrative will change and we'll be able to grow out of this.
Okay, I'll give Lawyer Okwe the opportunity to react to all the issues that you have raised, so that we'll wrap up on our economy bit. But you, my final question to you will be that the NPP is concentrating on jobs, and all of that. What happens to the other sectors?
Well,
so that you tie in the
jobs,
reactions.
Yeah, the jobs is just one area. You know, one of the biggest problems that we've had is to do, and because there's a local government guru here, I just want to refer him to the issue of decentralization and our PNDC law 207, which attempted to deal with decentralization as our biggest problem. As he said, urbanization, the movement to urban centers because nothing is happening in the villages. And the local authorities were meant to be what we called in those days the highest political authority for development. But the question is this happening? The answer is no. Because even the districts, they rely on procurement from the center to even buy them chalk. Chalk has to be bought in Accra and then sent to them in boxes. So in fact, most of the time, when they get the District Assembly Common Fund, their reductions, fumigation, this, that, by the time it gets to them, in Krobo, for example, out of about 1 million, they only got 68,000 after everything had been deducted from the center. So the Ministry of Local Government is in effect controlling everybody in that area. That defeats the idea of centralization. What Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo is saying that if nothing real is happening in those areas, then we have to re-engage in terms of how do we solve that problem. And that is why we have put together this whole idea of one village, one dam, for example. What does it really mean, even though it is meant to be a catchy slogan that sticks in your head? I'm sure we all studied in school. One way your teacher can get your attention is to try to make it interesting. But the crux of the matter is that we need to be able to irrigate our farms because we don't have enough water in the areas where there are farms, for example, in the north. So if we are going to do this, how are we going to do it? How come Burkina Faso is doing it and they are prospering? So what are the things we can do not only to get to their level but to surpass them? So this is one of the things that we are looking at to make sure that we can deal with this area in particular. And then the issue of industrialization, as my brother also mentioned on the other side. We can only industrialize with factories. And Madame rightly referred to the Asian tigers. We want to, and it sounds very unrealistic to some people because we have never been to the moon in Africa. So when Americans say they want to go to the moon, it looks realistic to them because not only did they believe in Kennedy when he said that, they actually went to the moon. We are saying that we want to become the African tigers. Okay. We want to be able to move Ghana from where we are now onto the next level.
So with your one factory,
with the one district, one factory, with the one village, one dam, with the one constituency, $1 million. Now, at the moment, the District Assembly Common Fund, I gave you the various problems. They are very good at the tackling of administration. But what we are looking at now, apart from being a special vehicle, we are looking at special targets of certain things that need to be developed in these constituencies. Now, some of the districts or municipalities, they actually are in charge of 2 constituencies. So when they get their money, there's very little they can do. We are now saying that we want to put this money per constituency to target special things under infrastructure. And that is what we call the Poverty Eradication Program. That is Infrastructure Poverty Eradication Program, IPEP. What is the purpose of this? This money is going to yield $275 million per year for the 275 constituencies. But we are not going to give it to the constituencies. We are going to give it to authorities that are going to be in charge of the money. And who are these authorities? One is going to be the Northern Development Authority, who are going to is going to consist of the Northern Region, Upper East, Upper West. Then we have the Middle Belt Development Authority, which is Brong Ahafo, upper part of Northern, Western North, Eastern, and so on. Then we have the Coastal Development Authority, which is going to consist of the lower part of Western all the way to the lower part of Volta, including Greater Accra and so on. Okay. Now, they are going to be in charge of managing this money. When they get the 275 million, which is per year, if you multiply that by approximately 4, you get about 1.3 billion or so. That is 1.3 billion cedis. Now, that is for 1 year. You have to multiply that by 4 years. So you get maybe about just roughly 5 billion, 5.2 or so. Now, look at our Auditor General's report for 2014. It says that $1 billion is unaccounted for through corruption. Now, when you multiply $1 billion by 4, that's 4 billion Ghana cedis. So, by tackling corruption alone, we already have more than $4 billion cedis that will be able to tackle the money that is needed for this one constituency per $1 million already. Okay, right. So anybody who asks me, for example, where are you going to get the money from, either doesn't understand the kind of way that we have issues with mismanagement and we should rather manage our purse prudently, or they would rather want to play a little bit of mischief, which they may be entitled to, but the people of Ghana know that there's money available to take care of these projects. Now, can you imagine what, right, and I need to just land on this one. Can you imagine what 4 million Ghana cedis times 4 years, 16 million per 4 years for a constituency, what kind of development it will bring to the doorstep of constituents and Ghanaians thereof?
Right, we are tackling the NPP manifesto for 2024 16, and my able panelists are here. Let me remind you that this show is proudly supported by Health West Ghana. You find them near Adrian Gano, near the Islamic University. It is an Ayurvedic clinic for all your massages and health needs. And my attire is also provided by Ashrifia, where you find them near Adentan Goyle Filling Station. We are back shortly. We'll tackle the issues to the latter so that we'll zoom straight to education once we come back from the break. I can see that you've sent in your messages. I'll read them. Don't go away.
But my name is Momin and I am a reporter. In 2012, I covered the elections extensively, but I never got an opportunity to tell you the stories behind the stories. This time around, there's a Reporters Roundtable where I, together with some of my colleagues, will be telling you the stories behind the stories.
Reporters Roundtable is a platform for journalists to express their views on topical issues objectively. This and every Thursday, you don't want to miss it.
Great to have you stay on the Reporters Roundtable. Indeed, we tackle all angles and all sides. We are still here discussing the NPP 2016 manifesto, and I have some of your messages here. This one says, what are we doing about the inland port at Boankra in the Ashanti region? Because in the manifesto of the NPP and the NDC, I have not seen it there. Okay, unfortunately you didn't add your name.
Let me just respond to that.
Yeah,
I don't know you want to read some
let me read some of
it. We've actually said we're going to do one at Dupe. That we have stated categorically. But as one of the panelists also said, there are certain things which may not be in the manifesto, but may receive urgent attention. So that's in Ashanti.
But that of Boankra has been in the offing.
It's been in the offing, but that's why we've concentrated on Dupe mainly, because Boankra is already in existence, but we'll see what we'll do about that.
Okay, this one says, I'm AB from Miochu. The street naming program is not done in Pram Pram. My house is not with a number. What can they do about it? Okay. Good morning. I'm Felix from Tema Community 4. And I believe the MPP manifesto on the tax reduction is a great one. And I believe the MPP will implement it when elected. Okay, thank you, Felix. Okay, so let's go on to, I have a number of the messages, but let's go on to education. Why are you smiling?
Oh, I'm just smiling.
Is it an interesting point you want to make?
Oh, I mean, we've always
but you, Richard, the NPP now is saying that they'll restore the teacher allowances. They'll restore nurses' allowances. Something that the government in power is saying that, look, it stifles the number of people who are taken as far as teacher trainees are concerned, nursing trainees are concerned, and actually bringing back the quota, taking the quota off. And now the NPP is saying that they would restore it, in effect bringing back the quota system. What's your take on that?
Well, like you're saying, in effect, it will mean bringing back the quota system, because government is not, or government does not have unlimited access to cash that they can be spreading across on every other front. So yes, when it was in place, what happened to the teacher training institutions was that every teacher training institution was given a quota beyond which you can't take. So most of them were operating under capacity. But I think this whole policy about whether to introduce or whether not to introduce will really be hinged on government's capacity to be able to fund such projects and fund other things which are of importance to the country. For them, the defense has been that, look, we are looking at it as a nation which wants to grow its space and also wants to industrialize, and all. How do you ensure that they are thinking that the education can ensure that? So look at the teacher training front, and they are saying that if we train more teachers, it will inure to the benefit of the country. And what do we do to do that? They want to motivate them to do that. Do we have the necessary cash to be able to enter into such things? You look at nursing, yes, there's a shortfall even in our health sector as to the number of doctors, the number of nurses to take care of 1,000 people and beyond. And so yes, they want to do that. But like you're saying, I would want to hear from them. So when that comes, would it still be open? Or would it still be opened up like as it's been now, that is been taken off? So now when you have the capacity, then most of the training colleges are now taken to their capacity. They are taking students to their capacity, and people are going. Would it be the fact that when this is introduced, would it bring back the quota system? So then you have an institution which can take like 1,000 now taking 400, because that is what government can cater for in terms of giving them the amount. But you see, those are broad policies in going forward into what they want to do about education. They are in 2012, they were clear on their policy. They were going to make education free and infrastructure, build on infrastructure and all that, and they've not departed. I don't see any departure from the 2012 things, but for the issues of policy which has got to do with these allowances, there's no clear departure from it, because I think consistently in 2008, from 2008, if you look at the 2008 manifesto, look at the 2012 manifesto and the 2016 manifesto, their policies when it comes to education has virtually remained the same, and they are looking at improvement of infrastructure and also making it accessible and all that, and that they've maintained. This year, what makes it different is this issue about the allowances, and what they are promising is that, look, they are going to restore it. Yes, they will restore it. Would it come with cutting the cutting of the entrance and all those things? Yes, that is what I want to hear. But they are promising it, and when you read it, they always say, and they've had explained themselves on several platforms, and as a news person, I have listened to on several platforms as to how they are going to do. So the challenge of funding it has not, they don't see it as a challenge. Basically, in their explanation, they say that there is a plan to do that, and they are promising that.
Mr. Ojo, restoring or not restoring, how good or bad would it be for our education system?
I always have problem with giving things en masse. What I would want to see is doing a bit of means testing. There are people in the country who really need some of these supports. There are others who can afford it if you allow them the opportunity to enter the system. So I would always go for, yes, I want some form of restoration, but it should be based on a mean testing system. Otherwise, somebody from a fairly good, strong background in terms of finance can be enjoying something that they don't really need. But somebody, mind you, education is a great equalizer. I think when we started, Mr. Okwe
give references to
somebody, yes, who rose to become mind you, he became the president of Ghana. Mind you, the man he's talking about became a ceremonial president of a country from a teacher who was walking how many miles, you said?
6 miles.
Okay.
So education is a great equalizer. And not recently, there's a colleague in your office, they were discussing on Teachers' Day. I was listening, and I was so touched. A colleague of his, he was talking about his background. Somebody supported him, Omar Sanda. And I was so touched, and I was so happy for him. So we need to be aware of people in the system who have serious needs that must be supported. So if there is a system that is going to support some of these people, but I will not go for everybody getting it, because it is not everybody who may need it, but whoever needs it, let's give to them. So that is my personal point of view on that.
Yes, well, I would agree with my panelists that it's my fellow panelists that it's largely a question of funding. And on that point, I think I would also like to draw attention to another one of the NPP's education policies, providing free SHS. Just maybe press for some response to some of the civil society groups suggesting that actually will be quite expensive, maybe a bit more expensive than anticipated. And so I think on both of those fronts, we see some funding challenges.
But
I would like to ask quickly that in the United States, because I know they have that in England, do they have basic free education for secondary schools?
Mm-hmm. Yes. All the way.
You know, and madam, we can't have countries like America, like UK, because the alternative, there are people who go to private school and pay, and there are people who pay medium, and there are people who pay nothing. I know
but
children
they are
in England.
A developed country. Have we gotten there yet?
So no, that's why we even need to do it more, because there are poorer people in Ghana than in America, and yet even they believe in free basic education. And that is one of the challenges that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who is a great trainer of the youth, I'm sure you're aware of the scores of lawyers who he has trained and are now what we will call big men in our society. He comes from a very deprived background himself in terms of who his father was. But for education, he would not have the chance where today he can come and tell Ghanaians in English or in Twi or in Ghana, as he's very proficient in, that he wants to be president. And then the people of Ghana believe that he has the capacity and the capability and the ability to become the president.
But has the NPP done the cost analysis?
We have.
For electorates to better appreciate the issue?
We have given the percentages of the oil. We have talked about the annual budget funding amount. We have talked about the education money that is available already. We have talked about all of this. And that is why we are saying, and as repeated by the journalist who said he has been listening to us from time to time, that we are able to fund this budget. Now, in terms of education, we believe that none of us sitting here will be anybody but for our teachers. Because if you don't have a good teacher, you can never excel in whatever you do. Now, if we have teachers, we've talked about free education, that is for the students. But what are the things we are doing as incentive for teachers? Because it is true that, as he said, some people may come from a privileged home. But I know a lot of privileged homes that when their children tell them they want to become teachers, the parents say, no, we are not going to support that. We are going to support you to become a lawyer or a doctor. True or false? And that, as for teaching, no.
Your reward is heaven.
Exactly. So there are two areas that we want to focus on. The first thing is with the allowance, or what they call alawa. The teachers are very keen on it. Look, we didn't just go and say we want to give it. The teachers say they need it. So if you remember, there are certain, and today because we are not looking too much at the politics, I won't go into mention anybody's names, but two government officials who went to Wesley College, they were driven from there because they say no alawa, no talk. Why is this important to the teachers? So we, as a listening government, we want to listen to their needs and to give it to them. If you remember, for even doctors,
at the detriment of the many who can't go through teacher training.
No, there's not, well, then in that case,
or creating a gap.
Yeah, but
because
in that
our
case,
educational system is expanding and we will need more teachers.
Very much, but in that case, if you realize, a lot of the private schools, they don't use the teacher training. They use graduates from universities. That alone is employment. So if we are able to make sure that the teachers have the two incentives which I mentioned. One, they are taken care of in terms of allowances. But two, and most importantly, we give them incentives so that they go to the rural areas. We have good medical care there. We must have good education for their children or their family there. Sometimes even the spouse may refuse to move because there'll be nothing for the other to do. That in itself is a very good reason why we're trying to go into the one district, one factory. And a factory cannot stand on its own unless it is supported by a farming activity which will be a produce. You can't have a sugar factory without sugar cane. So you must have the irrigation to bring the fruit or the produce to the farm gate to the factory gate into wherever it goes to. So
and how does that tie into education?
That is why I'm saying that without education, without these things being there, the teacher who you are sending to this rural area won't go. Because I'm sure you know about this problem, where a lot of teachers who are sent into the rural areas, they refuse the posting because they say that there's no economical, as they say, economic activity. Once there's economic activity, it would lead to good health, good sanitation, it will lead to good housing as well. Because why build a house in an area where there's no economic activity? And all of these are intertied into one area that we'll deal with. Now, another very important area that we are going to look at, and it ties in with the Zongo Development Fund, which is to deal mainly with education and sanitation issues. In the Zongo communities. That's why we're going to bring about the Zongo Development Fund. And then also to deal with accommodation. These are the 3 pillars. But one thing that we also need to do is, with the allowance for the teachers in that area, the Islamic instructors, their allowances have been taken away from them. And they are very upset. And they are saying that, don't they want their children in those Muslim communities to be taught? Why is it that they are not being given an incentive that was there previously? So we are saying that we are going to bring... No,
is it just in the Islamic community?
No, they are complaining in their particular area.
Okay.
So we've also taken that into consideration, and we are going to deal with that particular problem to make sure that the allowances and the other incentives are restored for these Islamic tutors.
Okay, one thing that caught my attention,
yes,
as far as education is concerned, that you promised that we will aggressively promote science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But you would agree with me that most of our schools are science biased.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Oh, you don't?
Fact, no. What I'm rather
Mr.
complaining
Journalist,
about.
are you aware that most of our schools are science biased? And in getting Ghana to be the leader in technological innovation and scientific research in the sub-region, as the MPP is promising, and the continent and the world as a whole, then of course we need to find ways of getting our...
Madam, so that I don't spoil my chain of thought, but I just want to quickly address it before you ask him.
Okay.
I rather think we are diluting science in this country. For example, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology was built to deal with science and technology issues. We have so many students who are not able to do science subjects, and yet they are focusing on the arts, the creatives, and the other things.
Business.
Yes, which has been diluted. So that is my opinion with regard to the science and math.
Okay.
Well, I tend to agree with him more, because we feel that is why there's been a lot of initiative trying to encourage the study of science within our educational systems, and it started a long time ago. In fact, when there was a time in this country where we had selected schools that had science oriented labs, resource centers, and all this, and these things should have been encouraged more. And that is the main reason why the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology was named, because of that. Look, you talk about improvement in our health sector, improvement in the economy, and all these things. These things are not what somebody would say rocket science. It must come with a certain formula, and sciences help in this very particular field. You want to improve your technology, you really must concentrate on improving your sciences and all that. But you can only do that if infrastructure in the various schools are upgraded to that effect. So you have various schools which don't have laboratories and all those things. And particularly in the rural areas, we talk about science, and you go to a rural area, they are teaching them something to do with the computer, and it's only the drawing. So the one who is teaching is not holding a computer, the one who is learning is not holding, I bet you, the kind of computer that will be drawn in the person's mind, and what applications he will be able to apply himself to. So these are some of the things that I think engineers that kind of policy to look at improving science and also ensuring that science education becomes paramount within our society?
One missing thing in the manifestos we are discussing is also the issue to do with supervision. I'm very much worried about the level of supervision in our public schools. Because earlier on, Mr. Okay mentioned that you go to private schools, they are using
Graduate
graduate.
teachers.
On the contrary, you'll be surprised that the private schools are rather using the least qualified teachers. But because of effective supervision, these
That's what I meant.
these teachers are
were not
rather
teachers.
churning out children who are doing very well. So I think particularly in the basic school from the lowest level up to say JSS, to an extent the secondary schools, we need to look at supervision at that level. And I think it's a key area that we must shine the light on in our educational system.
Yes.
No, you have written on the media and politics
Yes.
in Ghana, and do you have the opportunity to take a look at how our educational system functions and all of that, and what can actually drive it?
A bit. And, I do think that a healthy mix of the humanities and the sciences is important, because if you only focus on science, then you may also miss the social and the historical, so not just the arts, but history and anthropology. All of these are important fields to go alongside and inform science. But I would also add that I do think emphasizing science at this point in history is important for all sorts of unforeseen consequences. I know that Ghana now has a space program in Koforidua and elsewhere, and that there was a little bit of controversy about the government spending money on that. But it turns out that investing in a space program actually gives some capability for monitoring the weather, which actually helps farmers. So investing in science may send you in all kinds of directions, but then that can also come back to those national development goals that you have.
Okay, but Lawyer Okwe, I'm tempted to say Professor Okwe. Lawyer.
He's also a lawyer as well, so but
yeah,
I'm not a professor.
But do you think when it comes to Ghana's educational system, the problem really lies with technology, or it is that of a technological gap?
Well, it is a big part, because all the countries that have developed with technology. So obviously without technology we can't develop. In fact, there's such a shortage of science and math even in America and in England, that most of the people who come and do that are from India or from South Korea, because they are in Japan. So if even the West is experiencing this problem, because they are more difficult to apply, if you understand it at the basic level, then you are able to excel throughout. But somehow at the basic level we ignore it, and what has become more attractive, as we're doing in University of Science and Technology, is more humanities, because we can get more money, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the biggest challenges in our education is the issue of book and research allowances for lecturers. I'm sure you're seeing all the strikes and all the misunderstandings, and the amount of times that university students have either had to postpone their exams, skip them altogether, or have not even been able to go to school simply because there was an entanglement as to the issue of book and research allowance. So we are saying that we are going to restore it, and we are also going to establish a research fund, because if you look at, for example, the College of Surgeons and Physicians that was established in Ghana, it did two things. One, our doctors, as soon as they got to a certain level, they had to travel abroad to be able to improve their study and to get to a certain level. So what did that mean? One, it meant a brain drain, because when they go, they might be enticed and may never come back. Two, it also meant that when they studied there, whilst they are studying, they are actually attached to hospitals. So whatever they are studying, the patients of Ghana are benefiting. This is what we want to replicate in all the various spheres. I'm sure you can see the University of Ghana Business School that has been built recently. So now if you want to do the MPhil, the MBAs and so on, you can do it in an environment that is equally good or even better than the ones abroad. So that means that our business, senior business people can be working, which is to the benefit of our economy, studying at the same time, or to stay here so that after they finished, they don't get tempted to stay abroad. So these are all various things that we are trying to put in place in terms of education. So we want to particularly deal with the teacher first policy and then also improve upon the basic education, because we realized that even if it's carpentry, artisan work, being a mechanic, it's got to the point, if not getting there, but in Ghana it's getting there, where to even fix a bolt in a car, you would need to set the car up to a laptop for it to computerize everything before you can work. You can never do that if you don't have basic education.
Okay, I'll allow us quickly shift to energy. And we know for a fact that the MPP is promising and industrializing, right?
Yes.
Yes, but we know for a fact that an unstable energy would, or if you have unstable energy, it will hinder industrial development. And we know for a fact that this government is also doing its bit to ensure that our energy crisis is stabilized. What more can the MPP do if the government in power is already doing more, or its bit to ensure that we have the energy that we require?
Yes, we feel first of all that the government has not done enough to deal with energy. Now, before the government came into power in 2009, these are some of the things that we had started or done. We done 400 megawatts. We had put in place the thermal, that's the one power plant, which in itself is 126. We had the thermal 2, which is 49. Mines reserve 80. Boom. Thermal plant 220. Additions to Akosombo, a lot of people don't know that, 108 megawatts. We had also done the Takrady one, and then the Asogli plant. The Takrady one was 132, Asogli even bigger at 200, and then the Osono one, which was 126 megawatts. These were all things that the MPP had put in place to start. When the NDC came to power in 2009, there was no Dumso for 3 years. So there was a gap for which they were supposed to look at the energy situation and either add to or stabilize. The issue was not about energy not being there. It was about us not being able to.
But Dumso started from the MPP era, right?
No. There was even a first Dumso in the 90s, which was just about a year. The MPP one was just about a year. But if you remember, it was because of the Akosombo issue. It was about water. But this time, it was about the fact that energy is an area that I work with in a lot of clients. So I want to give this technical analysis. The energy available as of now is about 1,700. Our needs at peak is about 1,600. But if you look at idle plants, including even the new ones that have been brought, we have about 2,800. Now the question is two things. One, how come that we didn't have a shortage of excess power and yet we had done so? It's because it was a financial problem. We couldn't afford to buy the crude to fire these plants.
So what is the MPP proposing?
So the MPP is proposing that we are not going to use emergency plants to solve Dumso. And in any case, an emergency plant cannot be for 10 years. That is impossible. Anybody who knows anything about energy would tell you that emergency cannot be for 10 years. So we in the MPP, as we come into power, we are going to quickly deal with some of the issues that come with the production. You know, we've said in terms of even tariffs for electricity, the answer is again not to tax the businesses so much. Like for example, the hotels are suffering and most of them are closing. My brother mentioned a very important point with the fuel, which for us is also tied to the tariffs.
The
tax reduction, because the tax component, as he rightly said, in the fuel, do you know the percentage? between 60 to 70% is all taxes. That cannot be right. So the NPP is saying that we are going to reduce the tax component that the government is getting, so that when the fuel goes lower, as it is right now international, and as my sister here is enjoying in her country lower prices, and Ghana is rather not enjoying higher prices, that will not be affected because the American government has not raised the tax component. We have. When it comes to tariffs, for example, also the tax component, we are saying we are going to reduce government's tax component so that there will be cheaper energy, and then the businesses will be able to fire and produce more, which again leads to the profitability issue. So in a nutshell, this is what the NPP intends to do to tackle and deal with this issue once and for all.
Okay. Mr. Ojo, wouldn't you say that the energy crisis in Ghana now, the petroleum hikes and all of that, is a problem that we created for ourselves, and that the leadership of our nation has failed us as a populace or electorates who mandates them to lead us?
I am very worried that you go to London or in the UK where they don't have sun. There are people who install solar panels in their houses, and they can generate enough electricity.
Even in South Africa here.
And it's also temperate.
Yeah.
But in London, at least I can speak about London. Okay. And what they do is that they can even allow you, after using if you generate your own energy, there's a reverse system that you can feed into the national grid. So at the end of a period, say a quarter, they like doing things in quarters.
Sure.
In quarters, they will just do an alignment. How much have you used, and how much have you given into the, have you put into the national grid? I mean, an individual in their house can supply the national grid. So when they do that, they find out sometimes they will have to rather pay you because you might have generated more than you needed and you supply them. We live in Ghana. Even the little, when it's even raining, we get sunlight. We can power some of our equipment. Yet, we are not using solar. Currently, if you want to bring in solar, things to do with solar panels and all that, there are no tax exemptions and tax rebates for all these activities. So I believe that for a start, one of the key policies that we should be looking at is renewable energy.
Yes.
In fact, I'm very worried. I mean, I'm in the environmental arena. So I'm very worried, even with the kind of these car power ship and things we are bringing, they have their own effects on the environment. Now Ghana, we are crying about climate change, and we are also becoming major contributors. So I believe that I am not comfortable with the line we are going towards resolving our energy problems. We've not looked at renewable energy. And for me, if we don't start looking at that direction, we are also not, because these things that we are importing, fossil fuels are very expensive and also not environmentally friendly. So why do we keep doing things that are not helping us? So what the question remains, what about renewable energy? And for our situation in Ghana, solar, what have we done about it?
Okay.
In fact, let me just quickly show you. If you look at our energy policy, you'll see that one of the things that,
actually, so that
if you look on your book, page 14, F and G.
Okay. Build solar parks in the northern part of the country.
Exactly.
To achieve this, we will provide investment tax credits to owners of commercial, industrial, and utility scale solar photovoltaic systems to take a one-time tax credit of qualified installed costs.
Yes,
G,
the second one.
will ensure local supply of solar panels to meet the requirements of our policy proposals by establishing a renewable energy industrial zone where the private sector will be supported to build factories for the production and assembling of the full components of solar power
So
systems.
that would answer his very legitimate question about renewable energy and also about solar. And this is something that we have also not thought about, but just like the Bui Dam project. You know, the Bui Dam project was something that has been lying down since ever, I think from the Buzia era, and that was resurrected. This is not rocket science, but it has to be implemented, because you see that there are a lot of policies that are what we will call armchair or armpit papers that are lying down. So this is what we want to do. And in terms of renewable energy, we are actually going to have an industrial zone to deal with it. Okay. And one of the things that we're actually looking into is to do with wind. It is another important area we're looking at. And we want to put all of this, he legitimately mentioned, into what we call the energy mix, because it will reduce our per kilowatt hour, which at the moment in Ghana is quite expensive. In Ghana, we're talking about anywhere from about 22 to 24 per kilowatt hour for production. That is 24 cents per kilowatt hour, and that is too much. Whereas in Ivory Coast, for example, they are roughly around 14. So that means that almost 10 cents on us, even for the production of a bottle of mineral water. So how will we compete if, for example, an American company is coming to Ghana or going to Ivory Coast, or they are on the rigs and they have to buy water from Ivory Coast or Ghana, and Ghana's is 10 cents more? We know where they would buy their water, and that in effect would also affect our economy, simply because we have not got the energy mix to a competitive low average. So these are some of the reasons why we want to put these things together.
But Richard, let me bring you in here at this moment. Wouldn't you say that this solar agenda, hasn't it been long overdue? Is it that we don't have the technical know-how, or what exactly is the problem?
Yes, it's long overdue, but it's mainly because of poverty and other economic things. You know, so it's solar, we mentioned solar and all this, it doesn't come cheap.
The initial cost.
Yeah, the initial cost and all these things. And once you have a larger base of your people living below a certain kind of this, and it becomes very hard to do it. But then that is where government comes in. That is where policies comes in. When there's a conscious effort at doing that, there will be policies put in place to at least encourage such things. And you know, we've not so much encouraged it to the extent that if people have not even been able to get to recognize the fact that even as we live in compound houses and we come together and do that, we can depend on it and all that. You go to other places and you see people virtually depending on, I mean, outside the country, virtually depending on solar. And those places, the funny thing is that they don't even have the sun like we have it here. You know, they don't even have the sun like we have it here. So those are some of the things that we need to promote. Look, and I repeat, it's long overdue. When Nkrumah put up the Akosomo Dam, at that time, the whole country could only use just a minute fraction of what it was producing.
The population is only 6 million.
Yes. So the reason why I would say that various governments have failed in planning is that, you know, and it is a problem, I think, with the African continent. We always want to tackle issues at short-term levels. So like I spoke earlier on, in the next 50 years our population is going to increase. That is a very big economic power for us. What are there any plans to cash in on that? Currently, no. We are dealing with the small problems and all that. But I think all said and done, I tend to go more with the energy mix. Let's try to capitalize on the mix that will ensure that we have some stability. So whilst we're looking at the other areas, we're looking at how we can empower people also to procure these solar systems and these kind of systems which are naturally with us, wind, the solar, the sun, and all these things, and it will help us come out of this problem.
Doug, I'll make you bring in the perspective from your country.
Yes,
when it comes to energy. How does it?
Yeah, well, I want to echo the interest in solar. I'm thrilled to hear it because it's only in the U.S. just recently that they've managed to make the business model overcome the barrier. The barrier is the initial investment. You know, if you want your own house to go solar, it costs so much money to put those solar panels up. But then there are new companies like Solar City that, as you describe, you don't have to pay up front. Rather, they put the solar panels on, and then your solar panels run, and you get reimbursed for the excess energy that's generated, and also you just pay a little bit per month. So I'm thinking there's a role for government to play in helping the business community come up with some kind of new creative models that Ghanaians could afford.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's sort of like a solar mortgage system.
Yes.
So you are paying it. I know.
In installment?
Yes, pay in installments, because I know of solar companies in Ghana. I know one in particular, Transolar, who actually want to bring in that initiative. The problem is to have the person who would take the bulk of it. For example, if it's in the housing market, HFC or Ghana Home Loans, for example, they are the person who would pay the landlord the money, and then they would have an arrangement that you can pay to them in installments. In Ghana, we need that sort of company that has that sort of finance, as you mentioned with the Solar City in America, who would become the Solar City of Ghana, to be able to deal with that. And believe you me, if we're able to do this, it would go a long way. And that is why we want to start by the government helping with this, and to also give tax credits so that people are incentivized to do this. And we believe that some of those who can do that are, for example, the big conglomerates, the factories that are coming in. They will be able to solarize, get those credits, and then even the excess, they will use it to supply the areas around them.
Okay, we have more messages. This one says, hi, I installed solar panel just yesterday in Afienya, in Tema. It is real empowering my freezer, 2 flat screen televisions, 12 LED bulbs, but mine is so costly, but it's worth it. This is from George.
Do they have air conditioning?
He didn't mention that. Please ask Mike Okwe for me why everyone in the studio is enjoying the AC while he is sweating. Unfortunately, you didn't add your name. Can the NPP produce a detailed document indicating the factories for every district for intellectual discourse? I saw how they struggled to get the starch factory to run. Joel in La. Okay. Madam, you are not fair to the white lady. Oh, really? She was on the floor talking. You allowed the NPP man to say.
No problem.
Oh, I guess the focus really is on the NPP for today.
Yes.
But she made a point where she wanted clarification. So, my dear, that is why I brought in the NPP man.
Yes.
Thank you. This one says, I'm Doku from Nungwa. Michael Kwe Jr., you made my day with these good ideas for my mother Ghana, especially the coming youth. Okay, Doku. Thank you. Please, good morning. I'm Abdullah from Medina. Michael Kwe should give us a break. They said things more than this in 2001 to 2008, but they couldn't deliver. James was so. That is from Abdullah in Medina. This one says, please, the lady asked about the factories whether it's going to be a state-owned or private-owned. I think Dr. Hasty made that. We didn't tackle it, whether it will be state-owned or privately owned. Sure, thank you very much for the reminder. This one says, when an institution is upgraded to a tertiary level, students there do not take allowances. They go for students' loan. This is from Mauli. Mike should understand that allowances were not meant to pay school fees for teachers and nursing trainees. Okay, thank you very much, Mauli. This one says, I'm Harry Norris. What are we doing about the inland? Oh, you said that already. And if you are building an inland port, you need a railway line from the seaport all the way to where you want to build. So please, please don't call the line. It's a test line. So it disrupts production. Thank you very much, but please send in your test. Let me go back to that one again. I'm Harry Norris. If you are building an inland port, you need a railway line from the seaport all the way to where you want to build. So please, where will the railway line pass? And since that project was our brainchild, why wouldn't we continue building railways, as it is high time Ghana does that? Okay, thank you very much, Harry. I don't trust NPP, especially Nana Akufo-Addo, from Andrews Okwe Pokwase. Okay. Please ask the NPP guy why or how many factories are they going to build in each year and how many dams each year. Richard. Okay. So let's take quick submissions. I know you have something on local government because the NPP was promising something, a policy direction. But let's take a quick reaction on the messages that we've had so far. Mr. Okwe, most of the things were directed to you. So quickly, then I guess we can't tackle all. Our time is almost up. So
okay. Now, the NPP, what we have said is that we're going to go into a public-private partnership. That's the PPP. And especially when it comes to trade and industry, we've actually got a quote here. We said, since job creation, and this has to do with the factories in the district, for us in the NPP is essentially a private sector activity. The number one priority for the next NPP government will be to put in place the policy framework that would help businesses expand and create jobs. So what we've actually also said with the factories is that in the areas where the private sector wants to take the lead, we will allow it. But in certain areas or in the production of certain materials, there may be a fact that the margins may be small. So certain companies may not want to go into production. So in that case, we would then come into a partnership with them where maybe, for example, government will own up to 40% and incentivize them with, for example, land, further tax rebate, so on and so forth, so that would also come up. But in all cases, we want to make this public-private partnership because we believe that is the best way to grow a business. Once it just becomes wholly government-owned, then it begins to lack a certain focus and requires the supervision, which sometimes is not the best for industry.
Okay, Richard, your final words.
Well, well, to talk about manifestos and all this, I think it's a good start for every democracy, and particularly ours, which is growing. It serves as a basis. I've always maintained that it's always good to plan on something than to plan with nothing in your head. So once there is something that you can depend on, something that serves as a yardstick, it becomes something that you can build on. And so it's good that whilst we are entering into another phase of our democracy, the issues about manifesto and the policies of various political parties with regards to the growth of the nation is taken seriously. And once I'm saying that, I think I'm quite happy with that.
Mr. Joe, local governance. You have something.
Local governance. I've looked at the manifesto. There are some very good.
Presidential Advisory Council. Is that what you're?
That's on governance, but local government specifically.
Okay.
Election of district chief executives is a wonderful idea that I think we should go on. They're strengthening the substructures, strengthening the role of traditional authorities. We've marginalized them from the system. Even the 30% that we spoke about, say we should do appointing consultation with them. We're not doing that. I'm very happy with trying to improve allowances of the assembly members. There's a promise to upgrade our Tamale campus, the Institute of Local Government Studies. I'm very excited. I hope one day it is done. I'm also very keen about, there's a talk about the municipal finance bill. This bill came up some years ago, and if it's going to come back, it's also a wonderful idea. But what is missing in all this is that, you see, we're talking about sanitation. Currently, we have National Sanitation Day. You go to most of the assemblies, they can't enforce people who people who refuse to participate in it. Why? Because there's no law. And most of the assemblies cannot pass the bylaws that will enable them punish those who refuse to participate in all this. So I believe it's a wonderful thing all in all. There are other things that we should continue talking about and put together.
And with GBC, our numerous platforms, we'll have the opportunity to talk about not just this platform, but we'll have the opportunity to talk about so many of these things. Doug,
yes.
Finally.
Well, my own area of research right now is on corruption. So I was very interested to read the section in the manifesto that was about accountability and governance. So we didn't get to talk about that today, but I know that this is just a launching point, and I encourage the media to bring up some of the points in both of the manifestos. Particularly the MPP talks about enhancing the independence of the judiciary and also enhancing the capacity of parliament and
policy.
yeah, and also the Freedom of Information bill, moving that into law, and then also setting up a website where citizens can log on and report corruption. And I would encourage the MPP to think about how to make that effective and how to people can be sure that the government will take action on that.
Lawyer Quay, your
Yes,
final words.
Thank you very much. Yes, with the issue of corruption, I think that too is something which is very important. We've devoted a lot of space and time to that, and we think that, as Dr. rightly said, to deal with corruption, you need laws that would deal with it. So we've mentioned a lot of things here, but because of time, I would want, maybe if you have the opportunity again, to deal with corruption as a whole topic for a whole time so that we can deal with it. But there are a lot of very important issues that we have looked at. For example, mining royalties to do with natural resources and so on. At the moment, we know that 80% goes to the government, and then 20% of course goes to the district and the traditional areas. What the MPP is looking at is seeding a further 10% out of its 80 so that the government will get 70, and then the extra 10% will go to the districts, so that the districts will have that extra 10% to be able to develop in these mining communities. I'm sure you're aware that in all our mining areas, Akwitia, Obuasi, and so on, they are very deprived. But rather, when you go to other countries, the mining communities, they have the most amenities. Johannesburg and all the rest, but to mention a few. So this is a very specifically targeted area. We are also looking at, for example, and most importantly, interest rates, because the interest rate we have now, above 30%, is not helping us. We have interest rates at the moment of about 34%, but in just neighboring Ivory Coast, their interest rate is around 7%. How will you be able to compete with Ivory Coast if they have 7% for lending and we have 34%? There's no business that can take money and make any profitable business that would earn that kind of money to pay that kind of return, which would then lead to defaults. And as we saw in the recent Financial Times, we now have the highest defaults in terms of businesses and banks. That cannot be good, because the banks will then be reluctant to lend. So all in all, we think that if by the grace of God we're given the opportunity by Ghanaians and they vote for us, we would come in and Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo would take the opportunity to implement all these brilliant ideas so that Ghana will be able to move on to the next level and become the African tiger as far as our economy is concerned.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful having you. I know your text messages keep coming in, but I want to thank you, gentlemen and lady. Richard Mensah is the news editor for City FM. Mr. Fred Odro is the head of Department for Urban and Environmental Management. Dr. Jennifer Hesty is a professor of anthropology and has written on the Ghanaian media and politics. And lawyer Mike Okwe Jr. is the Deputy Director of Communications spokesperson on MPP's Manifesto 2016. Unfortunately, I couldn't read all of your text messages. I'm so grateful for your text messages, and I'll respond to them after the show. Thank you so much. This has been the Reporters Roundtable with me, Rebecca Ewa. All thanks goes to my production team and my technical team as well, and my makeup artist. My clothing was provided by Ashrifia Wear, and our health needs by Health West Ghana. Meet us same time next week on the same platform.